Hi guys, so I just quick apologize for the fact that I never followed up on our first video. So I kind of made that first video as a, all right, well, I guess we'll see if there's any interest. To be honest with you, I'm kind of in my own boat as far as using Obsidian for medical school. So I didn't really know how much interest there was going to be. I ended up getting married and taking step 2 and then going into 4th year and interviews and applications and all this stuff. So I'm finally finishing up with my last rotation in my 4th year. And so now I actually have time to sit and focus on this a little bit. So I do plan on following up and making some more videos. Yeah, I'll have a little bit of time going forward before residency starts. So I did match into family medicine. So yeah, I think Obsidian has definitely changed the way that I keep track of notes and personal knowledge management. So yeah, I'm super happy to share it with you guys. This is something that I've been doing since day 1 of medical school. I do have some articles out there that I've written about my experience with Obsidian, and I can definitely link those. And I'll try to keep up more with the comments and the video description and everything, and make sure all the links work and everything. So I appreciate you guys. Yeah, we'll see where the road goes. Let me know if you have any specific questions on anything that you'd like to see from me. I think this could be totally directed by you guys based on your interests. There's definitely some things that I don't know. I'm not as into, I love Obsidian. I love Obsidian for the fact that it's a good note-taking tool, but I'm not crazy into coding or anything like that. I've learned basic code for this. I think that right now it meets all the needs that I have, and I've found that I've gone through different evolutions as I've needed to know more. And so, yeah, I'll answer what I can, but totally appreciate you guys. Thanks again. So I do want to say, before I really get into this video, that I went back, I watched the first video, and found myself kind of wondering about, what does this end up looking like when you diligently apply this system over the course of many years and through your studies in medical school. So I think that's what I would like to show you guys today. And before I really get into, what my notes look like and how you can develop your notes, I just want to tell you a story. This is just a story about when I realized this really, this system works, basically. I was in my 3rd year, and I was in clinic. I was with a family practice doc who had over 30 years of experience at the time. We were just sitting and chatting in clinic, and he had a colleague who came up to him, and he was treating a patient who was worried about croup. Just asked really innocuous question, which was can I give steroids, dexamethasone? Is it preferred to give it oral or intramuscular? My attending kind of looked at him and he was like, I don't know the answer to that question. And so he turned up to date, and he's, fidgeting around online. And I remembered that I had listened to a pediatric podcast, a Curbsiders podcast, a couple weeks prior, and I had taken a note about croup. And so I went into my Obsidian. I found in my croup note an unlinked mention to the podcast that I had listened to, and right there was a note that basically said, in no uncertain terms, from this expert pediatrician, said that it does not matter whether you give dexamethasone, PO, or IM for croup. And I was able to confidently share that information with them. And I looked that up in less than 20 seconds. You guys have used UpToDate or UWorld or anything like that. They're great reference systems, but you have to dig for information. And I knew right where my information was. And I think that's one of the big strengths of using this system. I think once you learn how to think within it and use it as an external structure that you can reference every now and then, I think that it becomes a really powerful tool. In no way is it supposed to replace your ability to think critically as a physician or a healthcare provider, but I have found that it works really well for those times when you have something right on the tip of your tongue and you just can't remember it, or maybe you can remember a word or two, and you can go into that note and you can refresh yourself on the knowledge that you've accrued already on it. So when that happened for me, that was my moment. Okay, this works. You know, I wrote down something weeks or months ago, and now I can reference it today, which is the whole point of notes, in my opinion. Yeah, so that's when I kind of realized this thing has legs. I've loved using it, you know, and since then there's been like countless other times where things like this have happened, where I've been able to pull information, and then it helps you understand where your knowledge base is and where you can grow it. So in that way, I think that this is a completely like wholesome and awesome tool to use just for medical education. I'm super happy to share this stuff with you guys. Yeah, why don't we get into the video? I'll show you guys the note, and I'd like to actually take you through a couple different notes and just show you what my Obsidian has kind of turned into. I do want to just like put like a quick disclaimer, like I don't put any patient information in my notes. You shouldn't either, at least like no identifying information. And any like medical jargon or medical notes that you see in my notes shouldn't be taken for medical advice. So I wouldn't reference my notes for that. Yeah, I'd love to show you what I have, and we'll go from there. All right, let's get into it. All right, so here I have my Croup note that I was referencing in the beginning. And so I know this looks like a lot right off the bat. First of all, you know, I taught you guys how to create templates. This is just a template that I use. It's a pathology template. And like you can see, like I don't have everything filled in. This kind of stuff builds itself out over time. Properties, this is something that we'll cover in the future, so just don't pay too much attention to it right now. But I want to just say, like, I was able to talk about that experience because like I literally put it down in this note, this Croup note, in my personal experience section. Like I think that this is one of the big benefits of using Obsidian. You know, if you keep track of your clinical experiences in your notes, I mean that's just building experience, like written experience. I have sources, and I've gone through several different iterations of pathology templates, so there are definitely like some in here that are a little superfluous. I like the way that this one looks now, and you know, I have like drop downs, and it's very easy to reference in the moment. Otherwise, I used to use headings like this, which is like totally doable if that's what you want. And you can collapse and unfold these too, so which is really nice. But yeah, I definitely have like other information in here that I just haven't moved up to the top. That's kind of how I work through my notes. Like I gather information, and then I'll spend like a certain amount of time just building out a note once it's got enough to really go off of. I just wanted to highlight this because, you know, this is where I kept this memory, right? I'm gonna show you exactly where I went to find like that information that I needed for the clinical encounter. So Obsidian, when you do these wiki links, they show you everything that your note that you're currently in is linked out to. I went into my unlinked mentions, which like the system recognizes the word Croup. If you haven't bracketed it and like referenced it formally in another note, then this is where it appears. And so I don't know why it's taking so long, but I ended up, so I listened to this is all like on a podcast on Croup. And so I ended up going into this and found, so when I clicked on, I believe it was this one. Here it is. Yep. There's good evidence to decrease admission rates. There we go. And so a single dose of dexamethasone is given as either PO, IV, or IM. Effectiveness is the same. So I got all that, and this is, you know, I also integrate Readwise. We can talk about this at a different time, but so actually it was an article that I read and then came back to. So like that was my process, right? I'm like, okay, you have in your head, okay, I've seen this somewhere. I remember that I read this at one point, and I just can't remember exactly where I read it. But because I took a note on it and it says Croup in it, then I can go into my Croup note and I can see exactly where I've read it in the past. That just simplifies so much. As I build out this note, it'll be something that I like put in my clinical pearls. You know, that would go right under this section here. So that's kind of like where I go with these pathologies, right? As you continue in your training, you think in different ways. If you're in your first year, second year, this is really useful for lectures. And here's like a lecture note from my second year. It was just a lecture on shortness of breath. What I like about writing things down in like, you're given a blank page. What I really like about that is you literally just, you can listen, you can write, you can copy things down off the screen, whatever you need. Like, it's flexible enough to do whatever you need in the moment. It's like the closest thing you can get to just like writing like handwritten notes, but I think it's way faster because you actually type. But yeah, so this is literally just like, this is a note that I went through, and this was what I learned that day. And then you go through and I think the real strength of these notes is when you review them well, which is easier said than done, especially if you take a lot of notes. But regardless, even if you don't end up reviewing them, if you're down the road, anything that you talked about here, if you've linked it, it's going to be there and you're going to be able to review it then. So that's a lecture note. I mean, and then those of you that are in your clinical years, so this is what like a daily clinical note looks like for me. It's literally just, I'm writing down, you know, like you might write down like, oh, who are you working with? Or like I've written down like phone numbers and like little codes to doors and stuff like that where you're otherwise going to forget it. And you just go through, you know, I write down things that it's like, okay, I need to review this, or maybe I put it in this note as a link and then I like tap into it and see what I have written on it, and then I'll fill in whatever I learned that day, right? I've found that it's super useful to break things up into like drugs. Like once you get on a clinical, nobody calls anything generic names anymore. So you're like, what is Zetia? I don't know. It's ezetimibe. So, and then yeah, then I go through like conditions. You know, you see like I have headings for things and I go through that. We're expected to do PICO questions, and so I've actually found that this is really like helpful for that. I have a template for PICO questions and then I basically just work through that stuff. Yeah, so that's a clinic note, right? I think if you set it up well, you can literally just have your phone. This is what I do. Like I have my phone. If I'm getting like a pearl or some like little nugget of wisdom from a clinician, I just like quick jot down and then it's there. Like it's in my system. That's all you really need to do with it. And then if you want to, you can go back and integrate it. You know, that's kind of the best way. But that's where like I said with the Croup note, like having all of this is all just like untapped information, like 16 notes that I've mentioned Croup in, and then you look at like the unlinked mentions and it's 38 times. Like that's just, you could literally just sit here for an hour and you could go through all this stuff and you could just populate it into the note, build out your note based off of every time that you've interacted with the Croup. Super powerful. I haven't found a system that does this well. So yeah, so that's my daily notes in clinic. And then I wanted to show you this one too. So this is like a clinical note, right? But then I also went the extra mile. I want to do like a case study on this patient. And so everything in in the blue call out here is, what's this case? How is this patient presenting? And then issues that I ran into, initial management, and like lessons that I learned basically. And I really thought that this is kind of a good way for me to like summarize what I learned throughout the day. Like you can make this a whole note in and of itself, right? And have it link out to like COPD and OSA, CHF, diastolic heart failure. That way then you'd have a patient reference. Like you could, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I have seen this before. It was in this patient. This is also what else was going on. And here was some of the issues that we ran into and how we dealt with it, right? As you progress in your training, these patients, I mean, from what I understand, you kind of start to recall them easier and easier. So then finally, I think like, this is ultimately, I wanted to show you this osteoporosis note because this is ultimately what my goal is for a note. These notes that I have, like my osteoporosis note, like I also have a community acquired pneumonia note that like I've interacted with the subject enough and have went through and like fully built out the note based off of all the links that I've had with it. I was expected to give a presentation on my endocrine rotation on osteoporosis. So I really dove in and I learned a lot about it. And I was like, this is a perfect place to capture it. This is what it looks like, right? I mean, I have clinical pearls, epidemiology, how a patient might present, the differentials to work through, pathophysiology I think I have down below. But then working through diagnostics, it's not as easy as you think. And then overall management, things that you run into as far as like complications and treatment. How to educate your patient. You know, like this is a big one. If you're going to take bisphosphonates with osteoporosis, then you really want to avoid taking any other, laying down or taking any other medication within 30 minutes of taking the pill. You don't take milk, mineral water, orange juice, anything like that. Like that's an important thing for a patient to know, right? Things where I've been like, times when I've been tested on this and didn't really understand it. I put that in difficult exam concepts. I've literally, this is a different part of Obsidian here, but like I've built out what does osteoporosis treatment look like, because for some reason in my head it never really clicked. And so like I was able to make this little like flow chart where it's a little easier to think through things. And then yeah, so I've referenced articles. Here's the lecture that I gave, other experiences with it, exam prep, like times when this has come up in UWorld, and like all of this stuff I just link out, right? And so, and then I have this like old pathology template here where it's like basic information that I learned at first. And then Obsidian lets you link out like even like if you're follow med Twitter or anything like that, you can link out those in these notes, which is I've actually found super helpful before. I had like a really good like ABG thing that I found on Twitter, and I linked it to my ABGs, and it like helped me think through it a little bit more when I was having a rough time with it. So yeah, that's what this ultimately ends up looking like. This is a place where I can feel like I can confidently come back to this note and I can work up a patient and kind of go through all of these different issues. And you know, like I've literally given a lecture on osteoporosis because of the amount of information that I've accrued on it already. So that's where like these refined pathologies and clinical recommendations for me, these are what like built out notes look like for me. I think the important thing to understand too is that, you know, they don't start like this. Like I showed you where we start, right? I mean, I showed you what like this is not a built out note right now, right? Croup, I mean, I just haven't interacted with it enough. I did have that one experience where I knew something that other people didn't, but ultimately, like when I get the chance to sit down, think through the information, interact with it, that's the big thing about Obsidian. Like being able to interact with this information is like seamless. It's ridiculous. And I've had fun like building out notes in the past because it is like you get to see everything that you've learned, and then you get to integrate it into a note, and it's like this is mine. Like this is the information that I've put together. You just wiki links make things like unbelievably seamless. I have articles that you can read about like why to choose Obsidian, and I'll link those below. I think really, you know, for me, this all becomes a reference system. You can't remember everything. Anki is really good for going through, you know, step 1 and step 2 and having that spaced repetition. But I'll be honest with you, nobody's going to keep doing Anki past medical school. Nobody's doing it in residency. You're too busy. You don't have time. If you don't keep up that spaced repetition, you lose. Like you lose information. And so I believe in the power of writing, and Obsidian lets me write and keep track and reference material that I've written down before. This is why I believe in the product so much, like the tool so much. For me, Obsidian, building this out is like a passion project of mine, and I I'm convinced that it will pay off in the future. You know, I'll let you decide for yourself whether, you know, this is something that you think is honestly doable for you, or if you feel like you'd actually get any use out of it. Because it's not for everybody, you know. I think you really have to have a love of writing. You have to like reviewing, recording information. Not everybody wants to do that or has the time to do that. So that's why I say, like, among my colleagues, I feel like I'm in a boat of my own in regards to my use of Obsidian. Eventually, you know, once you use it for a long enough time, I think it becomes this external structure that you get to interact with. It helps you recall information and be like, oh yeah, I learned that from Amboss, or I learned that from UWorld, or I learned that from a lecture or whatever. So, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like, if you're good about saying like, oh, this is a lecture on May 8th about heart failure, you know, when you link out that note to heart failure, in the future, you're going to be able to reference that and you're going to say, oh yeah, I learned that on May 8th. Like, I don't know, there's something cool about that, I think. All of this to say, first of all, like, this is what Obsidian can become. You don't have to start here, right? That's why my first video was like as simple as possible. I didn't start here. I can teach you guys how to build out these notes like this. And honestly, like, once you have the external structure, I think, you know, you just kind of run away with it and you populate it with your own text and experiences and lessons and things like that. And yeah, you kind of go from there. If you guys have any questions on anything, let me know. Like I said, I'm going to try to be a lot better about like interacting with the comments and everything like that. So, and maybe we'll get some kind of like chat set up in the future or something. But I would like to see that people are getting a little bit of use out of this. But I appreciate you being here. And yeah, thanks for coming. If you made it this long, thanks for sticking around. So yeah, I'll get to work on more videos as it comes along, and we'll see you next time. So catch you later.